Good morning. I'm out on the mountain this morning looking for whatever wildlife I can find to photograph and hopefully even get some video footage of. Over the years, spending so much time out with wildlife, camera in hand, I've learned a lot when it comes to wildlife photography and wildlife videography. As cameras progress, more and more people are getting into videography. So today I wanted to share some things that I've learned over the years, some tips that will help improve your videography skills. Some of these tips will be pretty basic, while others may be some you've never heard before. We'll cover everything from compositional tips to gear and camera setting related tips. Well, without further ado, let's jump right into it. We'll start with a fairly simple compositional tip, and the same thing applies to your wildlife photography as well. Give your subject room to move. So what do I mean by that? We can all appreciate those extreme close-ups of animals that show every detail. Many photographers talk about filling the frame with your subject. While that is nice, when shooting photo or video, especially a moving subject, you want to zoom out a little bit to give the animals room to move within the frame. By doing so, you give yourself some wiggle room and will avoid having your subject exit the frame in case the animal does something unexpected like changing direction or abruptly speeding up or slowing down. Unfortunately, there have been so many times that I've been filming some incredible behavior only to never use that video clip because I end up clipping the animal off halfway through. If this were to happen while taking a photo, you can usually come up with a creative crop that still yields an amazing photo. This becomes incredibly difficult to do with video as you're dealing with a whole sequence of frames, not just one. So zoom out a bit and give your subjects room to be wild. Another mistake that I've made too many times is not leveling my tripod head before I start filming. If your tripod head is not level to begin with and you begin to pan a moving scene or subject, your resulting video will become increasingly crooked as you pan. So before you start filming, take the time to make sure your tripod is level. Some fluid tripod heads, also called video heads, have a quick leveling feature that can come in handy in a pinch. If you'd like to learn more about fluid tripod heads, I've got a video about just that. I'll put a link to it in the description below and you can check it out after this video if you'd like. Now, many of you may not use tripods in your wildlife photography, or you may not want to get an additional tripod head just to run video. First of all, I highly recommend using a tripod if you're going to get into videography, but if you're totally against it, at least consider doing the following. If you don't want to use a tripod but still want to run video, I highly recommend you shoot in slow motion. Slow motion video is extremely forgiving when it comes to camera shake, and with enough practice it can be very difficult to tell that no tripod was even used. On the other hand, filming standard video without a tripod can be very distracting as every little movement is evident to the viewer. I'm not saying mastering this technique can't be done, I just think you're far better off shooting with the tripod or shooting in slow motion handheld. Slow motion also looks amazing and can be more engaging for the viewer as long as the clip doesn't drag on too long. I have the tendency of doing this and it's something I'm trying to fix. While we're on the subject of standard video and slow motion, let's talk for a second about shutter speed and frames per second. As a general rule, when shooting video, you want your shutter speed to be approximately double what your frames per second is set at. For example, if you're shooting standard video at 24 frames per second, set your shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, then set your speed to, yep, you guessed it, 1/60th of a second. When I shoot in slow motion on my Canon R5, my option for frames per second is approximately 120. I'm going to double that and choose the closest shutter speed to that number, which is 1/250th of a second. Doing this will give your video a very natural looking appearance. If you don't adhere to this general rule, you run the risk of having very jumpy and unnatural looking videos. As we discussed before, you want to eliminate as much unwanted jumpy movements in your video as possible. And this isn't just done by using a tripod. In fact, there's a culprit that you may not expect. If you notice in these nearly identical videos, one seems to be moving slightly while the other is perfectly still. So what's responsible for that slight movement? None other than your image stabilization. When shooting video and using a tripod, remember to turn your image stabilization off. Yes, that's right, turn it off. By leaving it on, your camera will attempt to stabilize an already steady scene and you will end up with some slight movements in your video. That being said, there are some scenarios where I do prefer to leave my image stabilization on. For instance, if I am shooting video handheld, or if my camera is mounted to a tripod and it's a little bit windy out. The professionals have tripods, mounts, and tripod heads that literally cost thousands of dollars, but these mounts do make it possible where they can shoot in almost any condition and not get any shaky video. But for the rest of us who may not be able to afford that gear or don't want to carry it all around, we do have to choose when to leave the image stabilization on and when to turn it off. Part of the fun of wildlife videography comes from the audio that goes along with it. While most cameras have built-in microphones, an external mic can really improve the quality of your audio, which will improve your video as a result. Even though many of these mics have hot shoe mounts for your camera, I recommend not using those, as you'll pick up some sounds like your camera refocusing, your image stabilization if you forget to turn it off, buttons that you push, and so on. Instead, get a wireless mic or mic with a longer cord that you can place away from your camera. This will reduce or eliminate those pesky camera noises. Apply these tips into your wildlife videography and I guarantee you'll begin to see improvement. Much of this video revolved around eliminating shaky video footage as you're out spending time with wildlife. If you want really smooth video footage, check this video out here and let us know in the comments what tips I forgot or what your top tips are when filming wildlife. Thank you so much for following along. Good luck on your next adventure. We'll see you next time.